now. Good to see you, Sean. Any developments today? What's happening?
Well, as you've said, the Ukrainians and the Russians are exchanging cruise missiles and particularly drone attacks. But the most recent news that came out, Russian shelling across near you in Kherson. That's killed 7 people, including, tragically, a young baby. And interestingly, there's been a Russian warship down in the Black Sea that's been firing on one of the civilian cargo vessels, trying to stop it. The report suggests that there's no casualties, there's no damage to the ship, and it carried on its way. But it's apparently up in Ukraine now. But all of that, in a way, is a sideshow to the main effort here, which is the fighting in the front line. And it seems to be distilling out into 3 distinct areas at the moment. Up in the Donbass, particularly to the east of Kharkiv, a little settlement called Kupiansk, the Russians are on the front foot there. They're actually taking territory, despite this is meant to be the Ukraine's counter-offensive. And likewise, in the south, in Bakhmut there, the Russians have reinforced the area and stopped the Ukrainian advance. All of that's consistent with the Russians appearing to still wanting to take the Donbass. The next area is to the east of Zaporizhia, which is where the main defences are, that the Ukrainians are pushing hard, trying to push. There have been reports of Ukraine make some sort of limited breakthroughs, but there's no evidence of anything significant as yet. And the final area of interest of the war is around the Dnieper River. You remember the Kharkovka Dam blew, which obviously protected the Russian western flank. But, of course, it is the summer. Gradually, all the mud's dried out. And that now appears to be another area. And the Ukrainians are reported to have made their way across that river. If that is true, and if they're able to build on that, that will cause the Russians some real headache down on the eastern side of the Dnieper there.
What's happened at the Kerch bridge? That's very important, isn't it? Because it links Russia to Crimea, which, of course, Russia annexed back in 2014.
Yeah, literally yesterday there were reports that Russia claimed that there were 2 missile attacks, 2 drone attacks on the bridge. At the time, there was a bunch of smoke shown, as it's shown here. Now, it's not entirely clear what damage was done, because although smoke, you think there's no smoke without fire, in reality, the Russians used smoke to obfuscate the bridge, because that way it camouflages it should there be drones that are trying to target the bridge. So it's not entirely clear. It's not the first time, though, that the Ukrainians have targeted this bridge. Back in October last year, you remember there was this huge explosion that took out, and it's still not clear now what actually caused this, but you can see the devastation there. That significantly damaged the bridge, and that was not back in action until earlier on this year, both the rail section and the road section. And then, of course, it came back into use earlier this year, then was re-attacked by Ukrainians back in July. And this time, it was only the road section that was damaged, and only about half of that road section, as we can see here. There's a big chunk taken out of it. It's been regularly attacked. President Putin took a personal interest in building this bridge. It was his company that built it, and he drove his personal car across it to open it. So this will be personally damaging to Putin.
Yeah, much heralded bridge by Putin. Does that mean that the Ukrainians are going to continue their focus on this bridge?
Almost certainly, but I think this is part of a much bigger play here. The Russian logistics are facing a huge challenge at the moment, trying to support the front line all the way across Ukraine. Just by way of example, you know, the Russians are using 500,000 kilograms of artillery shells every single day, and therefore they've got to resupply. Now, one of the routes of resupply is across the north there, through Russian-occupied Ukraine. It's long, it's dangerous. That's quite difficult. The second way is via maritime, through the Crimean port of Sebastopol. But that's why the Ukrainians have targeted 2 of the Black Sea Fleet vessels. If you remember, they were severely damaged in port. Third way is to actually a land route via the Kerch bridge. The Kerch bridge, as you say, will be regularly targeted. And then if you take those supplies up from Crimea into Ukraine, there's only 3 arterial roads to the north of Crimea. The Ukrainians have targeted the eastern one, the Chongar Bridge, and that's forcing the Russians to go out to the far side of Ukraine, all of which is making life really difficult for Russian logistics support. It's a lot easier for them to support across in the Donbass than it is over here, and that's probably why the Ukrainians have opened up the front across the Dnieper River, just putting even more pressure on Russia. But bottom line is, this is all about taking territory for Ukraine. So far, despite lots of fighting, week 9 of the counter-offensive, still no evidence of a significant breakthrough by Ukraine.